There we go.
Hello. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is a Betwixt the Books Discuss episode that we tried to do 2 weeks ago, and my computer said, no sound, Michaela, you're not allowed to speak. It literally tried to silence me. But I will not be silenced, computer technology. How dare you? So we're coming at you again. It's a little bit later, so the news is not quite as fresh as everybody else would have liked it 2 weeks ago, but we wanted to do it before it became such old news that, nobody even knew what we were talking about.
Got us to get to that other article that came out afterward, which is another layer for the discussion. So really, we just waited until we got all of the layers to have a more rounded discussion for you guys, rather than barging in without all of these resources. So really, it worked out, and it's great.
Yes. So if you can't tell by the title of the video, because it's a little bit vague, we would like to discuss the controversy that has been happening primarily on YA Twitter, but sort of throughout the YA community that regards The Black Witch, correct? That's the title of the book?
Yeah, The Black Witch by Laurie Forst.
Which, did it come out in August? Is that when it was released, or?
Yeah, some of that I kind of forget. I will be honest, the book, I'm usually quite, I'm good at noticing when new books show up in the teen section. And I think because the book went right to a table, it's on a display right now, that I didn't notice it. And I really hadn't thought too much about it. The cover is not one of the ones that I go, oh, pretty cover. It just has a feather on it. And so I hadn't really thought at all about it or heard too much about it until an author that I follow on Facebook posted the original article that I sent to Michaela. And any article that we will be referencing, by the way, Michaela has already linked in the description, so you can also read that which we are talking about.
Correct. I just checked Goodreads. It either came out in May or June, and I can't tell which edition is the American edition and which edition is the UK one. So May or June-ish. So it's been out for a couple of months, actually, before it really hit the fan there in issues. Now, if you are unaware of the issues, I'll try and briefly summarize what happened to spark all of this, but you can obviously read the articles we've linked down below as well to form your own opinion and see from proper news outlets as they are on the internet. There was one particular blogger or bloggess. Her name on the online stuff is Bookstore Babe, but she's Shauna. We're going to go with Shauna to humanize her, because it's important to recognize that there is a person behind that review, and don't attack her for it. She's a person. She has, after all of these events, deleted all of the posts on her blog, deleted her Twitter, deleted her Instagram, all of her social media, as far as I can tell, has been wiped off of the internet, except for this last review that people have sort of thrown up in the air as an issue. So I'm sure she got a lot of flack or something that came back at her about this, and we are not going to be attacking Shauna. Shauna just did what we all do when we read a book and we find problems with it. We make a post and we talk about it and we cite our evidence. And she was very thorough. She wrote almost 9,000 words in this review with pictures, page markers, quotes. I read the whole thing. Basically, you read the book along with her. If you didn't know, she does very thoroughly mark her citations and why she thinks certain ways, but it was her opinion on this book. Now, the thing that made that an issue was that it then went to Twitter and people were moving it around, and her 9,000 word review was then watered down to 180 characters that people were throwing back and forth, throwing at the publisher, throwing at the author, which was basically, this book is racist and don't read it. Which is not exactly what she says in her review, but that does like water down what it is she said. It's racist, it's ableist, it's sexist, it's all of these terms. And she cites a bunch of quotes where it says this. We have not read this book. We should say that, like, we cannot say whether the quotes that Shauna put up on her blog are out of context or something else. But based on like the articles we've read, our understanding of what the author has said, our understanding of what the publisher has said, and the way that Shauna posted that review, we have some thoughts on that. Now, I would like to preface this by saying, yes, we are both white girls. We're both white girls who like to say we are fairly open-minded, and by that, quite open-minded, pretty, like, welcoming and accepting people. If there is ever a point during this live stream where we say something that is like a form of like internalized hate that we don't even realize we're saying it, and this has been one of my worries, is that I'll say something that comes across wrong. Please let us know, because we will correct ourselves, and that's what you do in this situation. Is if there's a thing that you believe that is incorrect or is harmful to others, it is important to acknowledge it and correct it. And that's basically what this book was trying to do. Whether it succeeded at that or not is still up in the air, but it's something that we should also acknowledge, that that's what the book was trying to do.
Yeah, and also, I mean, this issue is bigger than just this one book and this one instance, and I think that it's an issue that a lot of people would say they've experienced on Twitter, is that, you know, your Goodreads will tell Twitter, if you have it connected, what you're reading. And I feel like there's a lot of times where, you know, you end up reading a book, and even if you don't know that you've stepped into the middle of a firestorm, all of a sudden there are people policing what you read, or there's a huge community that will back up. Like, around this one review, a bunch of people started blackballing this book without having read it themselves, and like shitting on people who wrote good reviews, and like how could you do that when this book is so awful based on one person's review and one person's opinion. And it was especially interesting. Michaela pointed me towards the Kirkus Reviews response. They actually did give the book a favorable review, and even Kirkus Review, which is like, they're not a person, they are like a major book reviewing corporation, got super flack for their positive review of it, and I believe you've linked that down below as well. And they had some very interesting things to say as to why, but like, it turns books like The Black Forest into something that, whether or what their actual content is or is not, it suddenly becomes very like dangerous to you as an online presence to say that you're reading it, even if you are trying to educate yourself on why other people are saying that it's bad. Because there's plenty of literature that we read as English majors in school that is racist, that's misogynist, but you read it partly because it is that, and you recognize it as that, and there's no way to tell. Like, you have to learn what is and isn't right, and there are plenty of books that are awful, but you read them to educate yourself. So yeah. Knowing that, obviously. So it's just an interesting, like, YA Twitter in general doing that sometimes a lot. Yeah. And there was another article that I then found a couple later on, posted by the same author, posted the original one, talking about the steps that YA Twitter has done to move forward, the voices of like Own Voices manuscripts. We need diverse books in YA, and talking about how YA Twitter is the powerful vehicle that, and while I don't disagree, I find that that second article didn't tackle a lot of the issues laid out in the first one, and just focus on a very minor, or not a minor, but like a subsection of the total argument in the first book. Or the first book, the first article.
The first article, yeah.
So
it is part of the conversation, though, and I think we'll touch on it a little bit later. But the first thing that I guess we should really discuss now that we've laid the background down. And again, if you want to read the articles to understand what we're talking about, if we reference something obliquely, you can do that. It's like down below, is to discuss this idea of author intent versus reader reaction, because that is very major here. The author and the publisher have both said, the book's not racist, it's supposed to tackle racism. And then everybody else is saying it's racist, it's saying all of these racist things. All of these racist phrases are found in the text. So who does the text belong to? Does it belong to the readers who are reading it as racist, or does it belong to the author who failed in her, perhaps, again, we haven't read the book, but perhaps failed in her execution of tackling racism in this, or sexism, ableism, whatever it is, in this particular text. And I think it is important to understand that, like, if you read that review and you believe Shauna and are like, I don't think I could read this book, it's very triggering to me, it'll remind me of events where people have said similar things to me or about me, I think both of us respect your decision not to read the book. You don't have to. And oftentimes when something like this comes up where there is a problematic element to a book, we will say, don't buy it. Like, go to the library, get the paperback versus the hardcover, because the biggest thing that you can do is not yell at people on Twitter or yell in comment sections. It's to speak with your money and to just not support the book. Now, do I think that this author supports or deserves to be like lose her career and not be able to do anything? No, of course not. But if you honestly feel that the book is harmful, rather than going to Twitter and shouting about it and attacking people, and one of the things we were reading was that there were people getting actual death threats and things like that, and that's not helpful to anybody. But you are allowed your opinion. You are allowed to say, I think this book is racist because I trust the opinion of this person who has read it. I feel it would be harmful to me, and therefore I am taking a stance and saying I will not read it. I won't buy it. I'm not going to support it.
I think one of the interesting things about it is, I mean, I've only ever seen a picture of Lori Forrest. It's on the Kirkus review, and she appears to be a white woman, and that can be an issue. I think that if you are trying to write about the struggles of someone of a different, culture, of a different, gender, of, just different, the struggles that you yourself don't understand, you can very probably write that wrong. Unless, you really take the time to do your research and to make sure your book is beta read by a bunch of different people who are the story of the main character. I think the interesting thing that the Black Witch tried to do, and what Lori Forrest has come out and said, it is the idea of someone with internalized, discrimination trying to come to terms with it. And that is something that, as a white woman, she, could write. And maybe, she wrote it wrong. But at least it wasn't, there's a very big difference between, a white person trying to write about the struggles of like a person of color versus a white person trying to talk about the struggle of what is internalized in whiteness. Yeah. Because if you are doing your due diligence as a person who is white, then that is a struggle that you try to confront every day. And again, there are so many different stages of, I think Kirkus uses the phrase, becoming woke. In their review, there are so many stages of becoming woke that there isn't an end of a journey. Yeah. Like if you wake up one day and you're like, yep, I'm completely woke, you're not. Mm-hmm. Like there are so many different stories and other things that you probably don't even realize. Because one of the issues with this book is that like her woking, like what is the correct saying of that? I don't know. But like it comes 350 pages into a 605-page book, and a lot of people were like, oh my gosh, how could she take that long to come to this conclusion? But at the same time, portraying that ability to like all of a sudden realize that she's wrong. Like, I'm not even sure like this could naturally happen in a 605-page book. Like, it's a lifelong struggle. So, you know, it's, for me, it's this issue of trying to present the reality of the struggle versus like what people would like to see as well.
Yeah. I think the quote that was pulled out from Shauna's review, this book was ultimately written for white people. It was written for the type of white person who considers themselves to be not racist and thinks that they deserve recognition and praise for treating POC like they are actually human, but holds no regard for feelings of marginalized people. Is a discussion that is super big right now. This idea of like sitting back and saying, because you aren't going out in lynch mobs or because you aren't attacking people, that you're not racist, but you still have all of these internalized beliefs that you don't question because it's just how you were raised. It's what you have known to be truth. It is the truth for you because it's been the truth your whole life. But the problem is that when a book is trying to discuss the journey that someone must go on from going from believing completely racist things to questioning their beliefs to believing something completely different, it doesn't happen overnight. And in fact, it is important to say this because a lot of people who would be raised in a situation where they would be considered, you know, racist or like racially prejudiced, they feel like, why even bother? Because people are just going to turn around and yell at them about it. Like, why even bother changing the way you think? Because it's going to be attacking you as a person rather than your beliefs. So this book is important for those white people that she's saying are terrible people. It's important for the people who are making steps, who may not be making steps, but might start making steps because they read the book and saw that like certain things they said or thought could be problematic.
And I mean, again, right? There's that issue of portraying anything as easy or not true. Like, you know, if she was only like mildly racist in the beginning, like, I mean, there's still going to be racist things said because that's how the way that she believes, and hopefully you watch that change. But also, like, there's the issue, and I mean, it's not just limited. Any book that tries to tackle this issue needs to make sure that it's not portrayed in a way where you can do it overnight, or like there's one big revelation you have and then you're woke, because there are plenty of like white people who are like, I recognize the struggle of like POC, you know, LGBTQ. I recognize it, and therefore I am woke. And like that's not how it works. And so like it has to be a struggle to properly discuss that.
Yeah. No, it does. And people need to be, perhaps in a blunt way, as like many of the quotes that she pulled out from this book are done, shown why that's problematic. The thing that I'm thinking of was the one that she pointed out. Oh, by camera.
Oh, okay. You just froze, but your audio is still coming through.
Okay, well, I guess we'll have this image of me looking thoughtfully off into the distance for the rest of the stream. The one that I was thinking of was that she's talking with a character who has or identifies as homosexual or as gay, and she's like, you just need to marry someone because that's what you do. And he says something along the lines of like, could you marry a girl? And she has like full on outright like, no, of course not. And for me, I was like, that's exactly what somebody who is a minority, who is prejudiced, should say to somebody who doesn't even realize that like what she's saying is harmful to that person because she doesn't have that existence. Because it's putting them in your shoes in a way. It's saying the thing that you just asked me to do is just as ridiculous to me as the thing I asked you to think about. So that for me was a very good example of like trying to confront a prejudice. I wish that I had seen more of that scene to see what they discussed afterwards. But the way that Shauna was framing all of this was like, how could a person ask someone who is gay to marry a woman? How dare she? That is so not PC. Which, again, is the whole thing that we're talking about, that you need to confront your thoughts, and that, like, erasing those points of view and erasing the issues isn't actually helpful to anyone. It would be the same as if, rather than saying it to her friend, she had thought, he should just marry a woman. And then when they were like, I can't do it, just go, I know, it's hard, isn't it? Like there's two very different things, because she's not changing her opinion or growing, and in fact is outright, like while she's acknowledging that this guy is struggling, she's not actually sympathizing and empathizing with his struggle. Whereas in the way that it was worded here, as far as I could tell, it was actually a way to create empathy within the character and create growth within the character. Sorry, I'm looking at our list of talking points. I think we sort of touched on it, but this idea that a bunch of people then went to like Goodreads and Amazon and other places and were like physically rating the book negatively because of this review without having read it. I think that we should discuss how both of us in our personal reviewing policy, if we don't read a book, or even if we read the majority of a book but don't finish the book, we don't give it a star rating. We'll mark it as read. We'll write a review saying, this is the problems I had with the book. This is why I didn't finish it. But we won't give it a star rating, because just personally and with our review, like our ideas of the stance that we have, and not the power, but like, I don't know how to say this. Like, if somebody's coming to us and trusting our opinion, they need to understand that we recognize that there might be something that fixes all of the problems in the part that we didn't read. And it's not fair to the author or to the book to rate it unjustly in that way.
Yeah, and I mean, for me, I know that having an opinion on something that I haven't read or haven't finished, for me, just doesn't make sense. Like when the, hissing and spitting about Twilight happened, I went and I read Twilight because I was like, I don't feel like it sounds like everything that I hate, but am I hearing, different? I'm not listening to the source. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's, I always hate, like when there's ratings on, I DNF'd it 5% in because of blah. Like, yes, I understand that's an issue, but there are like debut authors, for example, have a much higher, percentage of having slower beginnings, for example. Like beginnings are real hard to write. So if it's slow and maybe it picks up and maybe it goes too fast towards the end. Like you don't know.
Right.
And especially in these kinds of droves, like hating on something that you haven't read, it just doesn't, it's just frustrating for me because I really want to see the reviews from people who, I mean, even just like Shauna, who took the time for 9,000 words to tell me why in detail. You know what I mean? Your 1-star review doesn't have to be 9,000 words, but like, give me details, give me reasons why, but leave the space for someone to form their own opinion outside of that.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like that's, again, that will always be the biggest issue I have with this and with like the Twitter sphere in general sometimes, that you don't have the space to form your own opinion with some things. And it's not just this book, it can be other things, but like you have to ride the train or hide from Goodreads that you're reading it. Like personally, after I read this article, I wanted to, there's a way for Barnes & Noble booksellers to kind of rent books from Barnes & Noble, so we don't purchase them. It's a perk of the job to make sure that we're reading widely, and can talk about books as our line of work. And so I kind of thought, oh, well, I'm kind of interested in renting this book out and reading it so that I can form my own opinion. But I was just like, do I really want to get in the middle of like this popping out of my Goodreads? Like I'd have to hide it from the internet in a way of like, I wouldn't, it could take like one wrong tweet to get into the wrong hands for me to get, you know,
become a social pariah.
Yeah. Of just like, and I mean, that could happen to people who aren't on YA, you know, or don't participate in Twitter, and they decided to read the book, and all of a sudden, like, you're in the middle of a storm you didn't even know you were sailing into.
Yeah.
Like, and all of a sudden, it's like, what the what? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, how did I get here?
But then, and this is why we titled the video "Social Media Policing," is because this sort of pressure, the pressure that would lead someone as opinionated and thorough as Shauna to delete all of her reviews and delete all of her social media, who has been doing it for years, like, that's terrifying to those of us, not even like because we put our faces out there and put our opinions out there, but just like in general, if you're seeing this, it builds guilt within you, and then you are, I mean, they achieve their goal of silencing the readers. Like, it seems like it's an affront to people to read something problematic. Like, how dare you read something problematic? And it's like, well, I want to see why it's problematic for myself. I want to understand, and then I can more thoroughly contribute to the conversation. If we had read the book, both of us could be saying, here are our opinions on it, and here is why we agree or disagree with Shauna. Here is why we agree or disagree that the book itself is racist, or is it just tackling racism? But again, even like you said, I don't really want to put myself out there to be attacked just because I want to be thorough and just because I want to give somebody the benefit of the doubt, so to speak. If it turns out that it's racist, it's racist, and there you go. But I found out for myself rather than just taking someone's word for it, right?
Yeah, and again, like if someone were to read Shauna's review and find like the sentences extremely triggering and everything, you are well within your right not to go anywhere near it, and to share that information and be like, this is, you know, I'm not reading it for these reasons. You know, sharing trigger warnings in books for people, it's also important. Like, for instance, when we read the second Magician's book by Lev Grossman, like, man, do I wish that I had known about that ending before we got into it.
Yeah.
Like, man, did I wish I know that was coming, because that was just, like, shocking.
Yeah.
Like, shocking, awful, and very, very graphically triggering.
Yes.
And that was just like, this is literally 10 pages left of this book. How did this happen? But so, yeah, so it's like this fine line of like being able to share that triggering information, but letting people make their own decisions. And the reason why I feel like Black Forest is a bit different is because you have outlets like Kirkus Review saying, this is why we stand by our positive review. This is what we believe the book to be doing. You know what I mean? Yeah. It's one thing if like a book comes out and then like very reputable sources, especially in like cases written by POC or LGBTQ, are like, whoa, no, like, no. But when you have this amount of disagreement on it and like reputable sources saying, well, actually, like it's a different caliber of issue, and they all kind of get lumped together when you really have to deal with them on a case-by-case basis.
You know what I find interesting? Because I pulled the Goodreads page up earlier when we were looking at the like publication date. It has an average star rating of 3.27 stars. And when I was scrolling down, it seems like most people are voting or are rating it 4 stars, with a lot of like 1 stars as well. So it's definitely a derisive book where you either love it or you hate it type of thing. And again, we can't say who is correct and who is not correct here. But that you need to take that into account, that there are people who have read it and loved it, and there are people who may not have read it and are saying they hate it. So when you look at a star rating, look and read the comments and look and see what people are saying. If they have read it and they rated it 1 star, I'm not like, that's why you read the review. That's why it's important to also put at least a couple of sentences in your review saying, you know, why you rated it the way you rated it. Because it gives clarification for people who may not have known that all of this Twitter drama was going on and might have just saw it recommended on Goodreads or something and clicked on the page and went, you know, what are people thinking about it? It's important for them to see what other people think and see if it's worth it for them, because not all of us just look at the back of the book and go, this sounds good. Some people prefer to do more research and prefer to make sure that if they're going to spend the time and the money on a book, that it's something that they think they'll enjoy.
And also, I mean, issues like this, it's an opportunity for education, not a firestorm.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, people who, you know, enjoy 50 Shades, but that's not a representation of the BDSM community, like, at all. You know what I mean? Like, instead of being like, oh my God, how could you like that? You know, being like, oh, so you liked, you know, 50 Shades of Grey. Like, well, here's an actual article on how the BDSM community actually operates. You know what I mean?
Or here, go read Sunstone to see a depiction of an actual BDSM relationship as someone who has experienced one has put forward. You know, like, give them, say, oh, I see that you liked this aspect. It is problematic, but rather than shaming you for liking a thing, I'm going to help educate you and say that one was problematic, and this is why I think that. Here are examples of books that are similar that are not problematic, so that you can see the difference and understand why the XYZ was wrong.
Yeah, and again, like, it's not, the onus is not on, you know, the person of color or the LGBTQ person who knows the story or the member of that certain community to educate someone else. But I also know that there are a lot of people on, like, YA Twitter, stuff like that, who are, you know, white allies who also help do this. And, you know, I mean, everybody who...
Shauna being one of them. Shauna was, I like saw some of her like older Tumblr posts where she consistently for years has been saying that there needs to be more same voice authors. There needs to be more stories that talk about this stuff. There's people out there who are trying to give you the resources. And then it is your responsibility to go and read them and agree or disagree of your own choice.
And again, like, it's what if you are advertising something as problematic and people read it, like, it's a way to educate yourself on what not to do.
Yep.
You know, as we move forward, and there are like a lot of talk about making sure that your cast of characters when you write a book is diverse in, you know, a multitude of ways. You're still that one person writing the book, but if you want to be able to offer representation, you have to have some idea of what to do and what not to do. And so, like, again, reading books where you know it isn't done properly isn't like a black mark on you for, oh my God, how could you read that? It's like, for me, I'd like to know, because there might be something in there that I didn't even think about. You know what I mean? Yep. That nobody would have said, you know, because I'm white and I wouldn't think about it. Like, that's my way of educating myself.
Yes.
Like, you know, when I first read Twilight, I thought that Edward and Bella's relationship was, you know, was great, was fantastic. It was super romantic. I have a review on my blog of a book that I read for my thesis called Grave Mercy. There's a re-review, and it's still sitting on my blog, where I linked to my original 5-star review and then dissected my reasons for why I was now giving the book 1 star. It's because I grew up and I reread the book and I was like, what? How could I have ever thought that this
what Gretchen is saying is she got woke.
Well, I mean, and just like, and that was simple things, like they were just like not healthy relationships, just like not, it wasn't even, you know, something where I had to, you know, confront harder things like internalized racism or, you know, prejudice, stuff like that. This was just like your basic, like, this is being told, I'm being told this is romantic, but like actually like, ugh.
Yeah.
Like, and you know what I mean? And I had to reread that. I had to like go on a self-exploration to do that. And I actually had somebody who had like reviewed Brave Mercy when I first read it and gave it 2 or 3 stars. And when I gave my 5-star, they were like, "Oh, really?" And then like years later, I went back and I was like, "Now I get what you were trying to tell me."
Right.
I get it now that I'm not like 16. But like it's a journey. And you have to read that which is not good to realize, oh my God, I thought this was good. And then it was not.
So we've been talking for a little bit over half an hour, and we do try to keep these guys at about half an hour. We haven't even touched on one of the major things that people were saying, which was that they're aside from all of the things that Black Witch had about it, that there's this issue of representation and lack of same voice authors in YA publishing, and that might be something that we do a discussion of later, because it really deserves to be its own thing. It's part of the conversation with this book, of course, and with the controversy around it, but I think that is a discussion that warrants more look into like trends in publishing and look into like which books publishers are. It's not just that they're not publishing it, but maybe they are publishing it, but they aren't putting as much money towards marketing it as something else, or you know,
or one of the, I think it was the response article about how YA is helping, YA Twitter is helping to champion, like we need diverse YA books and stuff. Who was like people getting responses of like, oh, we already have a book published by an insert, you know, culture here author.
One.
Like one. And so we filled our quota, and that's just like, I don't even have words for that. But yes, which is exactly why it's like it warrants its own discussion and not to be jammed onto the tail end of this one.
Yes. So there is that. We did the thing. I again had technical difficulties, but I can deal with the thoughtful looking off to the side me. It's better that you can hear me, because just looking at me pantomime wouldn't have added to this discussion very well. Like we always say, if you have something that you want to add to the discussion, your opinion, are you going to read the book? Did you read the book? Do you not want to? Why not? Please leave it down below in the comments. If you think there's any other articles or things we should read, please send them to us, either again in the comments or over Twitter. I have been checking the like spam comments folder, so I do know that if you link stuff in YouTube, they usually mark it as spam. So if you're more comfortable, you can obviously tweet at us, because that'll go straight to us. And any other sort of thing. Next Wednesday, because today is Thursday, but next Wednesday we will be doing another live stream, but that is our book club live stream. We're going to be discussing Dead Mountain, which is Taylor's pick, and it's the last book in our cycle of nonfiction. I think that is being wise. Oh, if you haven't entered our giveaway that we have spoken about once and then never again, that's happening. We might have to extend that a month, just because I don't think we've had more than 1 or 2 entries, because we haven't done any social media marketing on that guy. But we'll discuss that. We should be picking the winner on that Wednesday, but if we aren't, we'll let you know. Surprise.
Surprise.
That is everything. I will see you guys again tomorrow. I hope that you all have a lovely evening.
I have an art review for Monday. It wasn't good. Enjoy that.
Surprise is this coming Friday the 1st. This coming Friday is the 1st. My review, not for tomorrow, but next Friday, is also an arc. Shock and awe. But I really loved that one. So, yeah, stuff happening.
We did things.
We did things. And we will talk to you again soon.
Bye.